Hi, in this video tutorial, we'll be looking at how to use movie files in VDMX. If you're starting from a new project, or if you're working from an existing project, you're basically going to be starting off by looking for the Media Bin plugin. Movie files can be loaded in either from the Finder. You can just drag them from any folder. You can also drag whole folders of clips at a time. So you can drag a folder like that. You can also use our built-in media browser. It's in the Browse and Import Media window here. And you could store favorites of clips or locations and drag those in from here. Or you can browse by volume, and you'll notice that there's also some recent files and recent places options in here that you can use as well. Once a movie is loaded in, you can trigger it onto a layer by clicking onto it in the media bin. It'll trigger onto whatever layer is targeted here, and since that's going to layer 1 in my new project, it started to play back. And the player controls are right here, the layer source. And if I click on this option here, it'll open up the player controls into their own window. And the effects and composition controls are here, so that I can use the composition layer opacity to fade the clip in and out from the main output. But what we're going to look at next are the controls for the movie itself. If you're familiar with most movie players, you'll see that we've got a time slider here. I can click on that and scrub through the movie to make it move from the beginning to the end or jump to any point in between. I've got a pause button, which stops the movie temporarily. I can use this slider, which is a regular VDMX slider, to adjust the range handles, which control the movie loop points. Above the movie slider are the reset points for the in and out point and additional controls for setting the in and out point. And you can use these along with keyboard shortcuts or MIDI shortcuts, so you can switch into hardware learn mode and assign, say, the G and H keys to those, and the F and J keys to the reset. And then during a performance, you can dynamically loop certain points of the movie and reset them just as easily. Below the time slider is the rate slider, and this controls how fast the movie is playing back. In the middle is 0. If you go to the left from there, the movie starts playing backwards. You can set it to go backwards as fast as -5x. And going forward, you can set it at 1x, or you can have it go faster. And if you've noticed in this slider, there are these interesting points that it snaps to. You can adjust where those are using the mark section of the UI inspector. You could add in these marks onto any slider within the program. Below this, you'll see that there's this option to synchronize to a clock. So if I click this button here, it'll make this clip loop over 4 measures. And it's synchronized right now to clock number 1. If I go to plugins, there's only 1 clock in this setup. And as that clock loops 4 times, the movie will loop as well in the same amount of duration. If I click this button next to the clock, it'll actually synchronize the movie time to the current measure position. So as we get closer to the 4th measure, which is coming up here, the movie will loop at the same time. And since this movie is synchronized, if I slow down this clip, say I move it to half rate, 60 BPM, the movie itself plays back at half rate. If I half it again to 30 BPM, now the movie is playing at quarter speed. Even though the rate slider is still set to 1, this is moving relative to this clock. So now if I instead double this to 240 BPM, the movie plays twice as fast. And when I slip this out of synchronization mode, the movie plays back at regular 1x again. Next to that, I've got volume slider and a mute button and other volume controls. So if you want, you could specify a particular output device. Soundflower will pass this off to other applications, and you can pick which stereo output pair you want to use for this particular movie. And if you're using the default output, it uses whatever your system default is set to. Next to that, we've got the options for jumping backwards by a certain amount of time. So you can do this by seconds and adjust that amount of time using this slider. You can also adjust this in terms of frames, or you can adjust in terms of beats, which is relative to whatever clock you have set there. So if I want to jump back by 2 beats, this happens relative to whatever the clock time is. So at 120 BPM, 1 beat is 1 second, and if I jump back, it'll be by 1 second. Next, you can also do it by slider mark. So if this slider has interesting points set on it for interesting points within the movie, you can jump that way as well. And then below that, you have this scratch slider, which lets you adjust relative to the current mouse position. So if I scratch to the left or right, the mouse disappears. And then lastly, there's the option for how the movie ends. So reversing loop, the movie ping-pongs back and forth. In loop mode, the clip just plays back and forth, beginning to end. In cut to black mode, once the clip gets to the end, you'll see in the output that the movie cuts to black on this layer. In hold mode, when it gets to the end, it just holds on whatever the last frame is. The default is to loop when the clip gets to the end. And you can adjust these for a specific clip in the file inspector itself. So if you want it clip to particularly always use a specific loop mode or any other option, you can set that in here.